Heading into this game, there was an air of desperation creeping into the club. With 1 win in 9 and the team falling down the table, the World Cup break couldn't come quick enough after the Watford game. However, a 94th minute winner and an own goal secured all 3 points and sent Royals fans scrambling for the You've Been Paul Ince videos to taunt the whole fans on social media. Welcome to episode 316 of the Tilehurst End Podcast. I am very much your stand-in host, Ben Thomas, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by our foreign correspondent, Marco Bader. How's it going, sir?
Hi, Ben. Nice to be here, like always.
Good stuff. Well, we're going to talk a little bit in a minute about the whole game, which saw us pick up 3 points as mentioned. But before we do that, a huge shout out to our sponsors and our patrons who have provided us all the way through this season and previous seasons with some very, very kind donations indeed, which helps us keep going and doing what we're doing in terms of articles, in terms of these podcasts and everything else. So thank you so much to all of our sponsors and our supporters in that way. And let's get into the large match recap.
Come rain or shine, it's time to relive the latest match action with the recap.
This podcast is sponsored by ZCZ Films, Reading's oldest ultras.
Right, Marco, basically this game saw us banish the hoodoo of Yorkshire. We've had 2 absolutely horrendous results, both 4-0 reverses actually earlier in the season. And the last time we won at Hull was when the PlayStation 1 was released. So we're going back quite a few years, really. I guess kind of backtracking a little bit, after the Watford game, there was quite a lot of doom and gloom. And I think fans were kind of, including me, quite desperate for the World Cup break to start. And very few people kind of picked us to get 3 points. We managed to do that. Fantastic result given the form that we've been in recently. I guess really the first place to start is the 4 changes made from Watford. So what did you make of those changes, Marco?
Well, first of all, I think 2 of them were mainly due to injuries. Brzianis for Lumley and well, if you can compare, then Hoylett played not in the same position like Hutchinson, but he came in for him and it meant a change in the system. So these 2 changes were more or less logical. Now the other 2 were Matey for Ejaria and Long for Joao, which I also could understand. So they weren't such a big surprise. Obviously, after such a negative run, you need to change something. And I mean, we've talked also a lot about Lucas Joao, and no one doubts his qualities, but he's this kind of player that he's very good when he's positive, when everything around him is positive. So if you find him in a contrary situation, then probably it might be worse to give someone like Shane Long a start, especially also if you, I don't know if that was an idea behind, but if you play the 3-5-2 system, then and you have only 1 player on each wing, then maybe it was also a part of the idea behind the tactical change that you have 2 strikers that are a bit more quicker. Not to say that Joao isn't that quick, but he's also big, strong centre forward. So yeah, maybe that was also behind the idea to start with Mate and Long. And so overall, I would say it didn't surprise me too much that these 4 changes were made, and I could understand them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest loss, we knew Lumley wouldn't play any part in the game, having suffered that injury quite early on against Watford. I guess Hutchinson was always a doubt really in terms of coming back from injury and then kind of going off again. And I think for me, Hutchinson is the big loss out of that really. Aside from Lumley, it was interesting. Mate and Long play up front, and I think there was a little bit more aggression there. There was a little bit more kind of mobility up front. So, from Paul Ince's point of view, being able to call on these players, which, to be honest, he's made some bizarre comments about the depth of the squad and the starting 11 and the backup over the last few weeks, which, has left quite a few of us scratching our heads. To bring Hoylett, Mate and Long in, No disrespect to Busanis, but we knew that was going to happen anyway. It's quite a feat, really, considering where we've been over the last sort of 2-3 seasons with strength and depth. And, certainly first half, we weren't brilliant. We got back into the game. Nice goal from Mate. And it kind of looked like one of those games that was going to peter out, really, until, of course, the ball got swung in. Andy Carroll knocked the ball back, and it was an own goal. Delicious own goal, really, as own goals go for us. What did you make of the performance? Because obviously, we got the 3 points, so you could say on paper it was a huge improvement to the week against Watford. But what did you make of the overall performance that you saw, Marco?
Well, I think in one interview of Paul Ince, he was saying that the performance probably away at Burnley was better than the one we showed against Hull. So, and I would say he's right with that. The performance obviously was okay. So nothing big to criticize. But I think in the end we had just that big part of luckiness that we were missing the weeks before. And I think fair to say that for at least during the first half, I would have settled for a draw. I would have been happy with it. So for me, when ahead of the game, I was hoping just not to lose. That was my first feeling. So to win it in the end is just fantastic, and especially now with this big World Cup break, even more important to have this 3 points in your back. And so I would say that in terms of the performance, it was a solid one. To be fair, when they were already leading 1-0, they had a big chance to score a second one, which I was nearly thinking they will do, because the opportunity was just amazing, or a big surprise that they missed that. So we couldn't have complained too much if we were 2-0 behind, although our performance was not that bad. So to win it in the end is even better. And I would also say that the key to that win was to have a bit more luck than we had in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned luck, because Paul Ince kind of mentioned the Burnley game of previous weeks and maybe some of the decisions that hadn't gone against us, or rather had gone against us. One of the key decisions in the game was obviously the Hendrick tackle, and we're going to talk about Hendrick in isolation in just a moment. But looking at the stats, we had exactly the same shots on target to them, same shots off target. But this is really telling for me, Marco. We had 35% of the possession. And it really shows you that win was an ultimate smash and grab. We're kind of getting to the latter stage of the game, and as you kind of briefly touched upon, I think most people, given the form and given where we were heading in over the next month with no games, that a draw probably wouldn't have been the worst result in the world. It keeps us ticking over just a little bit, but to then get all 3 points really was, to quite Paul into the icing on the cake, really. And I guess it changes the mood and the perception a little bit of the fan base going into the World Cup. Do you think that this win kind of puts to bed the bad form that we've seen, or the kind of the one win in 9 that we saw previously? Or do you, I guess it's hard to say, but do you anticipate some of these problems still occurring when we come back in the middle of December?
Well, I would say that in general, this team is capable to beat nearly every opponent, but on the other hand, also to lose against any one of them. So I remember talking after the QPR and QPR game and the Norwich draw, where we really showed great performances, where the reactions were more like, okay, we are capable of seeing these kind of opponents of the upper class, upper parts in the league. We can see them at eye level, so we are able to beat them. So and I still think that we are capable of doing that. But on the other hand, we are also capable of losing some of the easier games, like West Brom at home, after they changed or sacked the manager, was never going to be easy. But you would have expect us to win that game at home. So the performances during that part of the season showed that we are missing this kind of stability. Maybe it will be definitely interesting to see if the injured players return, if these players can give us more stability. I also think that there's a big bunch of teams that has more or less the same level. So little things decide whether you win it or you lose it. And so looking into the future, then, I can still imagine that we might have some games in a row that we can't win. I would expect us also to win some games in a row. So that's fair to say that the same thing is I would say is possible in a positive way. I think the main thing will be the quantity of injured players, and also the way we come out of this break. If we come out of this break losing the first 2 matches, and then we will be directly again under pressure, and then we will the Hull win will have nearly no effect anymore. But if, on the other hand, we start after that break with some good results, then I honestly think that can be a turning point, and then we can move again maybe more into the upper half of the table.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. You talked about stability, and we'll kind of come to that in a minute, particularly with 2 players that I want to focus on. But I was talking to someone who, a friend of mine is a QPR fan, and we were saying last week how crazy this league is. And I don't remember in the 10 years that we've been now effectively stuck in this league, it being as open as it has been. It's quite phenomenal, really, when you look at the table, how congested it is. You've got a couple of teams sort of getting a bit cut adrift at the bottom there, but generally speaking, you've got some really, really compacted teams in terms of points. Us ourselves, we're 2 points off the playoffs, and kind of around about 6 off the relegation zone. So, there's still work to be done. But for me, at the start of the season, if you said, right, we get to the World Cup break, we're on 29 points and we're 12th, probably would have snapped your hand off for that. So, all in all, forget the previous form. It's not been as horrendous as we probably thought it was going to be. Talking of stability, one of the things that's come up repeatedly this season is, the central midfield spot or the spots. And for me, we haven't really got it right. And one guy that's kind of started to come into the firing line a little bit is Jeff Hendrick. What do you make of his recent performances and his season as a whole, Marco?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Because first of all, I would say that my opinion won't differ much to all the other ones. There were games where you ask yourself, okay, was it that makes him start again? No, because there were some games where you just felt that maybe he was one of our weakest parts. And on the other hand, it seems that all the other players that have played in midfield, that Ince at least doesn't see them in that deeper central role. So it's difficult to say if he keeps him all the time because he has no other real option of players he likes in that position, or if he sees something more into his performances. Of course, sometimes in this position, in a deeper midfield role, you find players that are more or less anonymous and that are not so much participating into the offensive play. They are only playing the short passes. I remember in that case, not to compare Hendrick with Toni Kroos, but I remember Kroos also being criticized for sometimes just playing these easy short passes without being very effective to any goal opportunity. So sometimes a player in this situation, due to the effect of what you need there, is a bit more anonymous. But I'm still thinking that a fresh leg there in that position wouldn't be the worst thing. And who knows? I don't know if maybe the fact of having many other players back might lead also to a situation where, I don't know, we see Tom McIntyre in that position. It would be interesting to see him maybe as well. So overall, yeah, I would say it surprises me as well that he started that often, and I'm not totally happy with how he filled that position. But I would like to see someone else playing in that position as well. So we'll see if there is at one point of the season moment to change it.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, there is obviously a player in there somewhere. I think my frustration really is that the combination of Loom, Forner, Hendrick, it hasn't quite worked this season in the same way that it didn't quite work last year with, Renamotor. Drinkwater obviously came for a lot of stick from our fans kind of around January, February time. and obviously Loren as well. So it's a problem position. It's not just this season, but it's been over the course of the last sort of 2 or 3 seasons, really. So it's going to be interesting to see, how that plays out and whether or not we could potentially get someone else in on a free short term. I'm not sure that's even possible in January, but I think you're right. That would be a position I'd look at and say we probably need to shake that up a little bit and get some more stability in there. One guy on the other end of the kind of the praise spectrum, if you like, is Mbenge, who has really had, I say a breakout season, but he's surprised a lot of people with the way that he's played. Player that I confess I didn't know very much about at all before he joined us. If probably never heard of him actually. What do you make of kind of his I say uptick in form, but his kind of performances in general, how he's adapted to life at the Championship, and generally kind of where you see him playing in terms of his best position for the remainder of the season?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I didn't know him as well. So, he's a big surprise. Sometimes the players where you don't really expect great things are the most positive ones. And like we talked before, it reminds you a bit of Andre BK, who was also in some way playing, had the same style of playing, at least with his tackles, with his aggressive way of playing in the defense, but he's doing it in a more intelligent way, maybe. And another positive indicator is I don't remember if it was last game or one of the games before, when Tom Holmes gave him some indications, and so he seemed also a player who listens to the others, who is trying to find his place in the team, is trying to integrate himself. And so really, really a positive surprise. And my feeling is that if I only concentrate on Mbenge, that his best position might be the one in a defense of 3 on the right side, where he has 2 other players maybe around him. Well, he can obviously play on the left like he did against Hull, but He's for me, he's not the one in the central position, and in a defense of 4, maybe he still is missing a bit of that relaxedness, this way of leading a defense there together with Tom Holmes or someone else. So I would say in terms of the position, he one of the spots on the right or on the left in a defense of 3 suits him best.
I think the key thing, Marco, is that he gives us a bit of flexibility, doesn't he? And he gives us options. How flexible he will need to be is still to be told, I guess. I guess depends on injuries elsewhere. But we've had issues with centre backs being injured, and a bit of fluidity in the back line. So he's a great player to have. I know that a lot of people are calling for him to have a longer term contract, which I guess is possible. But he looks all right. He looks the kind of player that we used to scout years and years ago, kind of almost an unknown and coming in and doing a good job. So, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out for him, and obviously the defence in general, really. Before we move on to Imps's quotes, I just want to give a bit of a shout out, really, I guess, to Yaku Meite. It was 150th appearance at the weekend, Marco, which is quite an achievement given the way that the team has performed over the last couple of seasons, given the way that his injuries have kind of befallen him as well. What do you make of him overall as a kind of player? You know, he's been with us for a while now, came from PSG, was on loan for a little bit at the early part of his Reading career. But, you know, how do you rate him in the current crop of players that we've got?
Yeah, obviously it's good to see him back and getting some games under his belt, because the last season was pretty much of stop and go. So he had this long injury. He came back, was injured again. So he didn't have any continuity in terms of playing. So and that's something you could feel, or you could see on the pitch. Once he was fit again and was playing, so it was not the same Yaku Meite we knew from his time before. And it's normal after such a long period of being injured. You need some time. And talking about flexibility, I think Meite is also a good point in terms of flexibility. He's able to play like he did against Hull and up front directly as a central striker. It's possible to play him maybe in an attack of three, also on the right or left side. So he gives us also some flexibility. He's fast, he's big, but he's also physically strong. So I would say that I hope that with the season, as long as the season goes, and especially next year, hopefully having Meite like 2, 3, 4 months match fit. I really hope that he'll get even stronger and he'll score even some goals more and have a bigger impact on our offensive play. So I really hope that he continues the way he did against Hull, with his passion, with his runnings, and then I would be hopeful that we'll see also some more goals of him.
I think it's like you say, you know, you spot on there with the passion comment. You know you're going to get 100% from him. You're not always going to get the end product, but you know he's going to be a nuisance when he does play to opposition players. And he, you know, the old football cliche, but he plays with a lot of heart. And you know, he's loved by the club, by the fans. So, you know, long may it continue. And I think realistically, the international break, as I'm calling it, I'm not calling it the World Cup break, I'm going to try and call it the international break, will help him out, and he'll recover a little bit and be ready to go again when it comes to Coventry on the 10th of December. We're going to hear from Paul Ince now. His quote's taken directly after the whole game, and then we're going to be right back with some news bites for you.
You know, I've been asking these players to keep going to the well time and time again, Saturday, Tuesday, Friday. You know, no one's played 3 games in a week twice apart from us. So again, the last 15 minutes we're dead on our feet, but we keep going. We've got this fight and the desire to stay in the game. So the lads who will be here, they'll be going away for a week with their families, and you know, and family deserved, and it's not just the legs, it's the mind. You know, just recharge the mind. The mind becomes tired, and you become mentally tired. That's probably worse than anything. So, you know, they go away, get their rest, and when we come back and we go to Tilehurst, then we'll have more depth, you know, in our squad. Hutch will be back, Now will be back, Liam Moore will be back, Tom Mack will be back, Joe Lumley will be back, and, you know, hopefully in January we might be able to get a couple more in. So, freshen the squad up. I mean, having Naby back and Liam would be like having, you know, 2 new players, really, when you think about it. And that can take us into the rest of the season. So, yeah, looking forward to the break.
For all the latest Reading news, analysis and opinion, visit the website at thetilehurstend.com.
Okay, so news bites are very, very brief this week, actually. We're going to start with the women first of all. They've got a big game coming up at Aston Villa away on Sunday. So it's a good opportunity for them to try and get some more points on the board. It's been a very, very difficult season for Kelly Chambers and our squad up until this point. But hopefully they'll be able to hit a bit of form after this international break that the women are currently in and ready to go again against Villa. The under-21s, Noel Hunt's team, they lost to Wolves 2-1, which has kind of compounded really there. You know, the form's not been great for them. Previous game, they lost to Swansea 3-0, so they really are in need of a bit of a pick-up there. They play Cardiff away on the 25th of November. The under-18s, well, they've had a massive gap, really, almost a month gap. They actually go to Ipswich Town this current Saturday. So they'll be looking to get some more points on the board to help them build in their league as well. Obviously, from Reading's point of view, we are going to come back to this in just a little bit, but we've had 3 players picked for the World Cup. We've got Loon, who's off with Senegal to Qatar. We've got Baba Rahman, who's in with the Ghana squad. And obviously my man, Junior Hoylett, who is off to Qatar with Canada. Interestingly, Yiadon was not picked for Ghana, so we're going to unpick that in a little bit more in our World Cup preview shortly. But we're going to dive into the mailbag now, Marco, if that's all right. We've got a few questions to go over. We're going to hear from our sponsors very quickly, and then we'll be back with the mailbag.
Keep up to date with all things Reading FC. Follow the Tilehurst End on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, so first question for you, Marco, comes in from our very good friend, Valdemar. He says, if all the injuries were uninjured, or rather, if all the injured were uninjured, if you can keep up with that one, what would be the best Reading 11 and what formation would they play? I mean, that is a huge question. First of all, the fact that we would have players that weren't injured is a very alien concept to people at Reading Football Club at the moment. But also, what formation would they play? So I'm going to let you tackle that one, Marco, if that's all right.
Difficult. You nearly put a formation of only injured players, and that would be nearly as strong. Difficult to say and go. I think that's more or less the easier one with Lumley. I have to say that personally, I have never been a big fan of a 3-5-2 system, but maybe it's the system that suits us most. I don't know. Like we were talking before, due to the fact that I wasn't that happy with Jeff Hendrick in that deeper central midfield position, I don't know if it would lead to my favorite formation, but I would be interested to see Tom McIntyre performing in that role. I think he would be capable of doing well there, and as we have some interesting defensive players coming back from their injury, that would give us also some space there. So I would probably stick with a 3-5-2 system. Playing Holmes in defense and having hopefully Naby Sarr back. And due to his good performance, I would keep also Amadou Mbengue. Then in midfield, no doubt on the right, Andy Yedem, and on the left, Baba Rahman. So deeper midfield role, I would go for Tom McIntyre. Yeah, and then in midfield, I think I would go also for Tom Ince. Overall, I think he was one of the more consistent players with the most consistent performances. And difficult to say who can play along him in a more offensive role. I still got belief that Obi Ejaria is capable of doing well for us and covering the form he had once he arrived. So I don't know, maybe it would be worse to give him a try or to get that pot to Tyrese Forner. And up front, I think I would probably give the combination of Jaco Mete and Shane Long a start. But that's also difficult to say because if Lucas João is in form, then it's no doubt that he should start. And if you get Andy Carroll, if he stays for a longer period, then I'm pretty sure that he deserves also to start. So it's difficult. We have, at least we can call ourselves a bit lucky that we have 4 strikers that are nearly playing on the same level. So but that's more or less the kind of nation I would choose.
I'm pleased you said 3-5-2, and I'm pleased you said Shane Long because we've not lost when Shane Long has been in a pairing this season. Now, people argue that's been very few games, but it's still a lucky omen, I think. So that's worth holding on to. You've answered that really well. It's a stunning question. Fantastic answer as well. I looked at this from a kind of a 5-a-side team. So who's the core of the team for me? And I went Lumley, Hutchinson, Ince, Mete and Long. with Hoylett as my sixth man because I can't not leave him out because he's so versatile and brilliant and just incredible. So that was what I went with from a five-a-side point of view. But it's a very, very difficult question to answer. So thank you very much for that, Valdemar. We appreciate tough questions on this show, as you well know. Wimby, very good friend of the show and site, says, Jow, sell or keep in January? What are you saying, Marco?
Also a difficult one. I mean, I would say that we could have got a higher price for him in recent times. So in terms of money, I think there might be better moments to sell him. On the other hand, he will be, I think if I'm not wrong, he's out of contract in the end of the season. So would be the last moment to sell him, to get some money from him. Usually if someone who runs out of contract goes into the final part of the season, I would hope for to clear the situations during the winter break, in the sense that you give him a new contract or you sell him, especially if he's not playing week in, week out. So if there are no real signs that Lucas João might stay with us over summer of 2023, then if we get a good offer, then I would probably sell him.
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically, based on his current form and the way he's been playing this season in general, unless he goes on a scoring spree from kind of December to mid-January, no one's coming in for him when they know they can pick him up for free at the end of the season. I would be very, very surprised if he stays beyond this season. I really would. I can't see the club wanting to offer him a new contract, and I can't see him taking that at this stage of his career. Now, we've probably missed the boat on selling him. I think the time probably to shift him would have been this previous pre-season just gone, kind of heading into this season. But I can't see him, anyone putting any kind of money on the table for him in January, unless, as I said, he kind of starts scoring. But it's difficult. He's one of, out of the current crop, he's probably one of the nicest, most genuine players at the club, I would say. He's such a nice guy, but it's just frustrating because he goes through fits and starts with performances and work rate, really. And I know he infuriates a lot of Reading fans, but there is a player in there somewhere, and he's over the course of his Reading career, he's done okay for us, and I think it's very easy to forget that, really. Next question from Scott. He says, which players are we most at risk of losing in January? And I guess Scott's coming from a sale point of view, or potentially, clubs cancelling loans. So who are we looking at, Marco, that we think we might lose in January?
Well, due to his contract, first I would say Andy Carroll, no? But yeah, like we said before, Lucas João is definitely a player we have to look at. And I would say any of the players that only have a contract until the summer is obviously someone who could be moving. I think some of these players who haven't found so much space to play, Dejan Tetek maybe it's there also to name, or Obi Ejaria. So yeah, but I would also, if you compare it to other seasons, I don't know. I feel a bit more relaxed than in other years, because it's not that you have to fear to lose many of your key players. I think the team is well structured. We have a solid defense. We have some players like Tom Holmes, like Tom McIntyre, Shane Long, where they hear them, they will definitely stay there. No, there's no risk that they might lose and they might leave. And so I don't expect many of our players to leave, and I don't expect that there will be big movement in terms of bringing also players in. So I wouldn't expect to see more than two players leave us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point about players leaving, because, like you said, I don't see huge movement in the squad. I think the obvious one is Andy Carroll, like he did last year. We know he's only joined until January, but as Ince said at the weekend, it's not his decision. It will be sort of Andy Carroll and his agent's decision calling the shots. So, I think we're fully expecting him to leave again. Whether or not we can replace him, I don't know. Whether or not we can try and bring some youth through in January, I'm not sure. I don't know. But I think you're right. I think it's going to be slim pickings in January for all clubs. But Carroll seems the one most likely to go. Nearly there with the mailbag. We've got Dan Yost who's come in with a question, and it says, between Alex Ray and Pauno's chief assistant, who we established earlier was Marko Mitrovic, we've seen a run of, and I won't say this word, but shall we say stronger coaches on the touchline. Do you think this is a positive, negative, or negligible difference over the course of a season? I mean, I guess from my point of view, it's an improvement on Jose Gomez's assistant, who was, well, I mean, he was out of control some games, very, very difficult to manage his own emotions, which I think had detrimental effect on the performance of the team. I mean, how do you view Alex Ray, Marko? Do you view him as a kind of a positive influence on the touchline, negative, or nothing really?
Well, if you compare him to Marko Mitrovic, like we said before, then, well, from the point of view of a player, I don't know. I always felt then if the gaffer, the manager, the coach outside is reacting in the way like Marko Mitrovic did, then for me it would have been probably too much. So it wouldn't have had such a positive influence on my own performance, but also on the team, and in the end, I would also say on the referee, because if you're complaining all the time, then the referee might take a decision also against your favor, because you're complaining all the time. So I generally don't like manager or coaches that are overactive. In relation to Alex Ray, I still got the feeling that he's behaving in a positive manner. Gives you also the idea that Paul Ince is like more or less quiet on the sidelines, and he's sometimes the one who gives more instructions. For now, I would say. Especially as a combination, especially as a system of Paul Ince, he's doing a good job. I would say that I'm quite positive or happy about the way he's filling his role as assistant manager, and the most important thing is that he's like, it looks like a team. The way he's behaving on the sidelines together with Paul Ince. They always discuss things. They always talk about who to bring, what to change. So for me, that's the most important thing. Also, that you kind of have a feeling that these two persons work good together and don't give too much instruction during the game, because sometimes that can have also a negative effect.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point about affecting the referees, isn't it? Because the last thing they want to see is kind of coaches and managers going ballistic on the touchline. They were both, Ince and Ray, very combative midfielders when they were playing. They've known each other for a long time. And it's interesting because when he talked to Alex Ray, he's very, very softly spoken, very, very unassuming, very quiet, almost gentle in some respects, really, the way he gets his points across. But it's nice to see that level of commitment, I suppose, on the touchline. But you're right, as I mentioned earlier about Jose Gomez and, his assistant, but also Marko Mitrovic could kind of go over the line a little bit. And we don't want to see that, really. So it's interesting. I mean, ultimately, if we stay up, then they've done their job for the season, really. But it's whether or not that can have, a positive effect even more moving forward on the team and how they, performing games, really. Last question, and this is coming from Louisa, and she says, who is your standout player of this season so far? So, Marco, I'll let you kick that one.
Well, difficult to say because there's not that single player that stands out because he has scored so many goals or performed so much better than all the others. I think what we've seen pretty much during the whole season are performances, good team performances, where it was many times difficult to pick a single player out for player of the match. So same would go for player of the season. At that point, I would say that Tom Holmes has definitely good chances. Obviously, in his position, the way he's playing is not spectacular. But to see a local guy leading, sometimes also with the captain armband, leading the defense, having seen how much he has improved and with how much passion he is performing, I think he's definitely someone who will be there up front to have a chance to win it. You could also think about someone like Tom Ince, who sometimes, like against Hull, has shown some weaker performances, but definitely has been also some an activity, a point of activity up front there. Someone who has a very positive influence on our offensive play, and you never know. There can be also surprises like maybe Amadou Mbengue. If he keeps performing the way he does, if he then scores 2 or 3 goals more, then you never know. So difficult to say for now, but to me it seems that might be more probable to see someone from the defense win that instead of some player who's scoring 10, 20.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at it now, and if the season ended, if this was the last game of the season, we were talking about end of season, then for me, there's only one man, and that's Tom Ince. He'd walk away with the player of the season right now. We win when he plays well. We don't do very well when he doesn't play well. So for me, he's the standout. I mean, I would say that Joe Lumley has recovered incredibly well from that horror show up at Rotherham at the start of the season. So for me, he's kind of probably the most improved player that we've had. Holmes, you mentioned, has been very, very good this season when potentially that wouldn't have been the case. And obviously Hoylett, I know I'm slightly biased, but his flexibility and his kind of fluidity in position has been a real asset to the team. But really for me, there's only one answer, and that's Tom Ince. We're going to have a little look at a preview now, a slightly different preview, because normally we'd look at the next game. But as soon as that's a month away, Marco, I thought we'd get into to a preview of the World Cup. So we're going to hear from our sponsors, and then we will be back with a very brief preview of the World Cup.
Be loud and be proud and back the boys and make some noise. Come on, you R's!
Shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, ZCZ Films, showing that age is no barrier to being a hula hoop.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we've got 3 players representing us at the World Cup. We've got Loom for Senegal, we've got Baba Rahman for Ghana, sadly no Yiadon this time, and we've got Hoylett for Canada. Let's talk about those teams in isolation to start with. So, Senegal find themselves in Group A. They've got Qatar, Ecuador, and the Netherlands. What do you make of that group and the chances of Loom coming up against England, or more likely Wales, who will obviously win the group, Marco, as everyone knows. What do you make of his chances of getting out the knockout stages out of that group?
But so if Senegal would win their group, they would face England. Well, it's difficult to say. I mean, in the Group A of Senegal, there's like the big favorites are Netherlands. So it would surprise me if they wouldn't win that group. And the second spot will be interesting to see. I mean, I don't think Senegal are at least not inferior of Ecuador, and should be also favorites when they face Qatar. So it will be interesting to see who's getting who will reach the second spot. If I have to say, I needed to inform myself a bit more about the World Cup to be ready to answer that question. So as Senegal are facing Netherlands in their first match, they got the opportunity to surprise there. If they would get a point out of that, then I would go for them as a second place team. And so I definitely think they have a chance to reach that second spot that would be necessary to move forward. And yes, pretty much the same. Well, Canada's group is a bit more difficult with Belgium and Croatia, and Ghana's group. Yeah, I would say that Portugal and Uruguay are the favorites. And even South Korea is not a team you should underrate. So I think out of these three nations where the Royals are playing for, Senegal might have best of a chance to reach the next round.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree with you. I think Senegal probably got just enough individual quality to get out of the group. And who they play, obviously from Group B is going to be hotly contested over the next couple of weeks. You're right. When you look at Canada, and that is a very, very difficult group to get out of. Even Morocco and no strangers to knockout football. So, that's going to be very difficult for Junior and the rest of his squad there. Ghana, again, it's tricky because you look at Portugal and Uruguay and think, okay, well, they've probably got enough to get out of there. But even when you look at the knockout stages, if somehow Ghana and Canada get through, I don't fancy Canada playing, either yourselves, Germany, or what you'd imagine to be Spain out of that group. And Ghana, they're looking at probably either a game against Brazil or, again, tough one to predict, but probably Cameroon. And that's going to be difficult for them, really. So it's going to be an interesting World Cup. We've got you on, overseas correspondent. How do you rate your chances of not only getting out of your group but also progressing in the tournament? What do you make of Germany's chances, Marco?
Well, I would say that in terms of the technical or the players with their technical ability, we got pretty strong squad. I mean, if you look at players that can play the offensive line, you have someone like Serge Gnabry, Leroy Sané, you have Jamal Musiala, behind someone like Leon Goretzka or Joshua Kimmich. So my doubts are more in relation to the defensive play and also to the stability, because over the recent month and matches I've seen, they were always like performing one game positively, then one game with performing a bit peaceless, I would say. They will definitely need to be more solid in their and more balanced in their game overall. And being in the group with Spain is always difficult, because if you lose that game, that direct match against them, then you are already under pressure, and so that's definitely a situation to be aware of. So Germany starts against Japan. That's a must-win, and having in mind that Japan has also some real quality players, so you should anticipate them as well. I would expect Germany, of course, to reach the quarters or the semi-finals at least. And in such a tournament, it's difficult to say. I don't see that one nation that's ahead of all the others. So I would say that, like always, there are 5, 6, 7 countries that have such a strong squad that it can compete for winning the title. But in the end, it will depend also who they face in the after the group stages, who they face, which players are injured, and how their run of form is. So I wouldn't rule out that they could reach the finals, but my expectations are more in relation to semi-finals. I would say that's realistic.
I think you're right. It's going to be a very, very difficult tournament to predict, and it's so bizarre, the whole thing, really. That a lot of us will be watching the final with a Christmas tree nearby. So that's bizarre to me. That really is. But look, it's massive for me and other Wales fans. It's been a long time since we've been there. We're going to try and enjoy it and do the best we can. Aim is to get out of the group, and fingers crossed we can do that, really. So yeah, wherever you're watching it, whatever you're doing, whatever your views on it, try and enjoy it for the football, and focus on the positives that our beloved game brings to us, really. That's it. That's us done and dusted for a couple of weeks, really. There will be a lot of content, both written and probably a few cheeky podcasts here and there on the Tilehurst End site as well. We've got a few things lined up for you that hopefully you'll enjoy during this Reading FC-less break. Sim's just put an article up kind of reviewing our current season, which is average at best, really, but give it a read because he likes people doing that. I'm going to be doing a column about Canada football, which is going to be interesting, kind of Hoylett watch, really, because what else would I do in this time? And there's going to be other articles and bits and bobs. So, thank you so much for your support this season so far. Marco, thank you so much for joining me this evening, where it's obviously getting very late in Germany.
Thanks, Ben, for having me. Thanks, everyone who participate and supports us. And yeah, it was like always a pleasure.
And all that remains to be said is that we currently lie 12th, slap bang in the middle of the table with 29 points after 21 games played, winning 9 of those matches, which, to be honest, is probably a little bit beyond our wildest dreams at the start of this season. Enjoy the break, look after yourselves, and we will see you just before the Coventry game on the 10th of December. Come on, you R's.